formed. In the same year, 1944, you had the International Monetary Fund was formed. In the same year, you had one of the biggest treaties come down the pike to begin to tie together the goods and the economies, and that's with the GATT Treaty, and that began to liberalize the world trade. And which is a whole other topic. I don't have time to get in that. I'm very sick of this. Anyway, so 1968, you had the next major event was the Club of Rome was formed, and that's basically a group of economic elite. 1973, you had the Trilateral Commission that was formed by banker David Rockefeller to develop a worldwide economic power. 1973, also, we had the beginnings of SWIFT, and that was be able to do the electronic banking and transfers of money with the different currencies in different countries. That happened. 1975, 2 years later, they came out with what's called the Declaration of Interdependence, that declared that our economy is going to be regulated by international authorities. 1979, you had something called the smart card. If we get that far today, Derek, that will make sense why I'm bringing that up. That was developed because that's leading to a cashless society. Okay. Then you had another organization, 1993, called Mondex that was formed. 1994 was the next major back-breaking treaty to bring our economy down, and that was NAFTA. Okay, it's the North American Free Trade Agreement. Okay, and then of course 1995. Here comes your strong arm. In case people don't want to go with that, because NAFTA was not popular with a lot of people, and you had the beginning of the World Trade Organization, and that's the one that enforces the world trading rules. Okay, 1999, of course, is when we saw the birth of the euro. 2002, that's when they got the euro coins and their banknotes go into circulation. 2002, we also saw calls for a global tax to be paid to the United Nations, which has continued on throughout the years. Even here in the United States, you got people calling for that, believe it or not. And then 2005, you had another back-breaking agreement to further bring down our economy, the FTAA, Free Trade Agreement of the Americas, and on it goes. You got with the constant attack on our economy to break it down. You had that with the internet bubble. You had the whole Enron scan. You had the latest one now, 2007, 2008. We see with the issue of the real estate bubble. But see, folks, you need to understand all these have been done on purpose. They are deliberately taking down our economy. Okay, on purpose. Why? Because they have to break our backs economically in order to go along with the one world economy. Okay, we cannot become self-sufficient anymore. We have to look to a global entity, and the way that you do that is you destroy the economy from the inside out. This is, Derek, what a lot of people don't realize. What happened with Governor Elliott Spitzer in our state here in New York. Okay, this was a huge scandal. Most people just think of him, and he was like, if you recall that guy, you would say, well, yeah, that's that guy that got involved in that scandal with that prostitute, and they just yanked him out of office. No, folks, I think there's more going on to it than meets the eye, because Elliott Spitzer, wrote an article 3 weeks before he was taken out. Okay, and the scandal came to view. I didn't check it today, but the last time I checked it, it was still up on the Washington Post. And I'll give you the title of the article. You can read it for yourself. He wrote it, folks, and you wonder why he was taken out. It's called Predatory Lenders Partner in Crime. Subtitle, How the Bush Administration Stopped the States from Stepping In to Help Consumers. And basically what he's saying is the government on purpose allowed, even though people were throwing red flags about this real estate bubble, that the government on purpose made it happen, and that so that nobody can stop it. Again, why? Because you create a crisis, you can manage the outcome. And he says this, quote, not only did the Bush administration do nothing to protect consumers, it embarked on an aggressive and unprecedented campaign to prevent states from protecting their residents from the very problems to which the federal government was turning a blind eye. Okay, and he says in 2003, during the height of the predatory lending crisis, the OCC, which is the Office of Comptroller of Currency, invoked a clause from the 1863 National Bank Act preempting all state predatory lending laws, therefore rendering them inoperative. Okay, so the new rules prevented states from enforcing any of their own consumer protection laws against national banks. The federal government's actions were so egregious and so unprecedented that all 50 state attorney generals and all 50 state banking superintendents actively fought the new rules. They could see it coming down the pike. We can't do this. It's going to blow up. But the unanimous opposition of the 50 states did not deter or even slow the Bush administration in its goal of protecting the banks. In fact, when my office, this is Elliott Spitzer, the governor of New York, the former one, okay, he said, in fact, when my office opened an investigation of possible discrimination in mortgage lending by a number of banks, the OCC filed a federal lawsuit to stop his investigation. And 3 weeks later, he was taken out with this scandal. I wonder why. Folks, he exposed it, okay? And folks, I'm telling you, it's all planned. Why? Because you create a crisis, you manage the outcome. This was the big one, if you notice, right after this last one, not just with the dot-com bubble, but now this one, okay? Now we're finally ready to start talking about global currency, aren't we? And that's just it. And, folks, if you think it's going to turn around, boy, are you living in a dream world. I like this interaction, Derek, from two British reporters. And they tell us, you talked about the euro at the beginning of the program, they tell us, folks, just how bad it really is, okay? It's going down the tubes. And, folks, I'm telling you, it's being done on purpose. You know, so, again, they can say, well, gee whiz, I guess we better have somebody take control of the global economy because we can't let this happen again. Okay? Now listen to what they said, and you tell me, folks, if there's going to be a turnaround over there in Europe. I don't think so. And he says this. He says, first of all, he says he starts asking them questions about how much these European nations are into debt. And he says, well, hey, how much does, the one guy says to the other guy, he says, how much does Greece owe, Roger? He said, $367 billion. He says, correct. And who do they owe it to? He said, mostly to the other European economies. He says, correct. And how much does Ireland owe? He says, $865 billion. Correct. And who do they owe it to? Well, other European economies mostly. Correct. And how much does Spain and Italy owe? $1 trillion each, he said. He says, and correct. Who do they owe it to? Well, mainly France, Britain, and Germany. He says, correct. And how are Germany, France, and Britain going, Roger? He said, well, they're struggling a bit, aren't they? He says, correct. And why? He said, well, because they lent all these vast amounts of money to other European economies, they can't possibly pay them back. And he says, correct. And so what are they going to have to do? He said, well, they're going to have to bail them out. And he says, correct. And where are they going to get that money to do that, Roger? He said, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one. He kind of laughs. And then the guy goes on to another question. He says, how much does Portugal owe? And he says, well, hang on a minute. What was the answer to the early question? And the guy just comes back and says, well, just keep answering the questions, Roger. He said, where's Portugal going to get the money it owes to Germany if Germany can't get the money that it lent to Italy? And the guy goes back and says, well, wait a second. What was the answer to the previous question? He says, how can broke economies lend money to other broke economies who don't have any money because they can't pay back the money the broke economy lent to the other broke economy and shouldn't have lent it to them in the first place because the broke economy can't pay it back? And the guy says, he just goes to the next question. You're wasting valuable time. He says, how much money does Spain owe to Italy? He said $41 billion, but they're not going to get it. And the guy says, correct. He says, and what does Italy owe to Spain? $27 billion, but they haven't got it. They're broke. He says, correct. He says, how can they pay each other if neither of them has any money? He says, well, they're going to get a bailout, aren't they? He says, correct. And he says, and where's the money coming from the bailout? And the guy says, that's what I'm asking you. And folks, I'm telling you, it's funny. And actually, it's on YouTube, you can actually see the actual video interaction of these guys. It's hilarious. But it's so hilarious because it's so stinking true. But then the thing is like, what are they basically saying? Folks, get a clue. It's going down the tubes, okay? And you're like, oh, no, you need to understand. This is all staged. This is all being done on purpose. Why? Because from the Bible, we know what the end game is. They're going to use this as an excuse to grab control completely this time, the global economy, okay, and that ultimately the Antichrist himself is going to hijack the system, okay? And, folks, this is happening before our very eyes. It is happening before our very eyes, and we need to understand. Now, what's interesting, too, is they've already not only had all this into place, but they've already mapped out how the world is going to be mapped out economically. And this is really neat, Derek. This is what I really appreciate about the biblical account. I appreciate about it is because unlike what the world, the world like you hear about these supposed psychics making their predictions every year, and they're always like really lame and vague. It's like, okay, you live in New York City and you have to walk to work, and there's a population of a couple million people. I predict that you see you walking to work in New York City with a couple million people. I predict that on Thursday this week, while you're walking to work, you're going to see somebody you've never seen before. Ooh. That's really what they are. They're self-validating, like, oh, yeah, that's great. Are you kidding me? Unlike the Bible predicts things in very intimate detail, not vague details, intimate detail. The Bible predicted, listen, folks, the Bible predicted not only that the Antichrist would create a one world religion and a one world government and a one world economy that we're talking about, okay, but the Bible predicted how many sections this world system of the Antichrist was going to be split up, this economic region. Revelation 17 tells us that. And it says this, and now understand this, his 10 horns, or that's power, are 10 kings or rulers who have not yet risen to power. They will be appointed to their kingdoms for one brief moment to reign with the beast, that's the Antichrist, and they will agree to give their power and authority over to him. And so the Bible says, folks, that the world is going to be split up into 10 economic regions or kingdoms, okay, ruled by 10 people who ultimately is going to give that power over to the Antichrist. That's pretty specific, okay? Okay, and so that's the question, do we see any sign of that? Well, folks, we not only see signs of the world coming together in a one-world economy and a global currency, but these people who are also doing this has already mapped out the world, Derek, into not just one, not 47, not 312, not 122, but 10 economic regions. Okay, folks, this is what was freaky. This just came out. We exposed this on our Book of Revelation study here, and the European Commission. Okay, you can still check it on the website. I was there on today just to validate. It's still up there. They have already divided the world up into 10 different regions, and I'll read them to you: North America, Central America and the Caribbean, South America, Western Europe, Eastern Europe and Central Asia, Mediterranean, Middle East, Africa, Northeast and South Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, and Pacific. They've already mapped it out in 10 economic kingdoms. As mentioned earlier, I talked about the birth of the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome has also provided a map way back in the early 70s, I believe, late 60s, early 70s, and they've already mapped out the world into 10 economic regions. And this is this was dated March 11, 2009. I checked it out. It's still on their website. This is the Campaign for a United Nations Parliamentary Assembly. Okay, and but anyway, it's an article that they produced, and they admit not only it's in 10. This is so wild, Derek. The days that we live in. It's not just that there's 10 economic regions that they're proposing for this new world order system, this global economy, but they even have the 10 rulers picked out. And that's what this article says. It says the new research program on global democracy has been established. Quote, a global research program facilitated and coordinated through a convening group of, listen, 10 persons based in 10 world regions was established last year with the core funding from the Ford Foundation. That's a direct quote. That's the first line of the article. Now, folks, now you could read that if you don't know the Bible and just go, oh, okay, wow. Okay, so they got 10 people ruling over these 10 different regions on the planet, whoop-de-doo-dah. But, folks, if you read Revelation 17, that's exactly what the Bible predicted in minute detail would happen at the birth of the Antichrist kingdom. And that just happened, folks, last year. It's just absolutely mind-blowing how fast it's taking place, okay? But that's just the first step, okay? You also see the birthplace not only with the euro. Again, as was predicted, the euro was basically the trial for the world to begin to do that, to go into these different economic regions, okay? And that's the other big news that's going on. It isn't just the European Union becoming one of these economic regions, okay? We see that trend happening all over the place. If you haven't been paying attention, folks, there's a formation of what's called the African Union, just like the euro, okay? And what is that? That's again another trend of a region of countries in the world coming together economically with their own currency, okay? And then there's, of course, the proposed one that has been here and has been mocked many times, the North American Union between the United States, Canada, Mexico. But there's other ones. There's the South American Union, the Asian Union, the Central Asian Union, the Pacific Union, okay? And, folks, I don't know, gee whiz, I don't think you have to be too big of a prophet to figure this out. Gee, I wonder when all is said and done, Derek, how many economic regions we're going to end up on the planet. I'm thinking Revelation 17's got it right. It's going to be 10.
Yeah.
Okay? And again, it was predicted 2,000 years ago. Okay? But now you need to go back. That's stage one. Stage two is you got to not only grab control of the economy, but what did it say that the Antichrist was going to do? He was going to control what people could buy and sell. Okay? But what was the instrument that he was going to control the economy and people's buying and selling? Well, they're going to get some sort of mark or on the right hand or the forehead. Okay, and so that's what we talked about in our last interview, Derek, was the issue of the mark of the beast. And for the first time in mankind's history, we have the technology to pull that off on a global scale. Okay, but in order to do that, you have to now go to stage 2. And what we just dealt with was stage 1. Grab control of the whole world